Us is supposed to be close to her. That's what people expect when you grow up with a stepsister. You keep a respectful distance, you share a house, maybe a last name, but not a bond. At least, not a deep one. Samantha came into my life when I was 13. My dad married her mom, after meeting online, and suddenly there were new rooms in the house, new smells in the kitchen, new rules. She was a year older than me, sharp-eyed, quick-witted, and always slightly irritated by everything I did. We coexisted, polite, detached, functional. But something shifted that summer after high school. Maybe it was because I knew I was leaving for college in the fall. Maybe it was because she was too. Or maybe because we'd both gone through a rough year in that house. Our parents were fighting more than ever. The money was tight, and it felt like neither of us belonged anywhere. One night, around midnight, I knocked on her door and said, "Let's get out of here for a few days, just you and me. No Wi-Fi, no noise, just trees." She looked at me for a long second, then said, "Yeah. Okay." So we planned it, just a simple backpacking trip in Oregon. 3 days. No trail, just GPS, water tablets, a tent, and the dumb idea that maybe, if we got far enough away from everything, we'd remember what peace felt like. The first day was awkward. We didn't talk much. I walked ahead most of the time, and she trailed behind with her headphones in. But the farther we got from town, the easier it became. We started laughing at dumb things, how I couldn't light the fire, how she almost stepped on a toad. That night, sitting around the crackling flames, she said something I hadn't expected. "You're not as annoying as you used to be." I replied, "You were always meaner than you needed to be." We laughed, and for the first time in years, it felt like we weren't just step-siblings, we were human to each other. The stars were insanely bright that night. No clouds, no moon, just a sky so heavy with light that it felt like it might collapse and fall on us. I lay awake in my sleeping bag, listening to the forest and thought, maybe this trip was a good idea after all. The next morning we packed up early. The air was still cool, the ground soft under our boots, and the only sound was birds arguing in the treetops. I felt good, alive. I even joked that I'd take a leak in the middle of nowhere, just to feel like a true wilderness man. Samantha rolled her eyes, and waved me off. "Go pee, mountain man." So I did. I walked maybe 30 feet away from the trail, found a spot near some low shrubs, and unzipped. I wasn't thinking about snakes. I should have been, but I wasn't. One second I was relieving myself, the next burning agony. A sharp pain like being stabbed, right where no one ever wants to be stabbed. I screamed. It was primal. Samantha came crashing through the brush, a second later, and found me on the ground, pants half down, eyes wide with panic. I'll never forget her face when I said the words. "It bit me. There. A snake. It bit me there." And in that moment, everything changed. The pain was like fire, pure, instant, and spreading fast. My body convulsed, knees hitting the dirt, my hands fumbling between my legs as if I could undo what had just happened. I saw it slither away, a fat copperhead disappearing under the brush, leaving behind nothing but venom and panic. Samantha dropped to her knees next to me. She was trying to stay calm, but her voice was already shaking when she said, "Where? Where did it bite you?" I hesitated. Even in agony, even knowing this could be life or death, I couldn't say it out loud. I just moved my hands aside. Her eyes went wide. "Oh my God." I nodded, gritting my teeth. "It was right there. It got me. On it. It bit my fucking dick, Sam." She froze. For a second, I think she genuinely didn't know whether to scream or laugh. But the blood drained from her face fast, and she started pacing, hands on her head. Okay. We need to think. We need a plan. Shit. Tyler. There's no reception. I've got nothing. No bars. I could feel the venom already, my heartbeat was out of control, my legs felt numb, and I was getting dizzy. "I'm gonna die," I muttered. "Out here. With my dick full of poison. This is how it ends for me. Shut up. She snapped. You're not dying. She tore open the first aid kit, hands shaking, flipping through it like there might magically be a snakebite dick section. There wasn't. No anti-venom. No satellite phone. Just gauze, aspirin, water tabs, tape. She looked at me again, pale and desperate. I read somewhere if you suck out the venom, it can help. You have to do it fast. Before it spreads. My breath caught. I looked at her, and everything slowed down. No, she hesitated. Tyler, if we don't do something, no Sam. You don't have to. There's gotta be another way. There isn't, she said. Her voice was cold now. Sharp. She'd made up her mind. If I let you die out here, I'll have to live with that. I'd rather live with the other thing. She knelt beside me again, pushed my hand away gently. I saw her eyes flicker. Revulsion, fear, something else. But she didn't move back. I wanted to say no. Wanted to stop her. But the truth was, I was already fading. My skin felt cold. My lips were numb. I think I whispered her name once. Then she did it. I shut my eyes. Not from pain but from shame. The kind that burns deeper than the venom. Shame that she was the one doing this. That it was Samantha. My sister. Not by blood, no. But still. The girl who grew up in the next room. The one who used to insult my shoes, steal my cereal, slam her door in my face. And now. This. It lasted less than a minute. She spat. Coughed. Did it again. I heard her gag once. I felt the suction. The pressure. The awful intimacy of it. But I also felt the panic retreat. Just slightly. Like the venom was hesitating. Unsure whether to keep attacking or give up. When she was done, she collapsed onto her back in the dirt, breathing hard, wiping her mouth on her sleeve like she'd just run a marathon. Neither of us spoke. My pants were still around my knees. Her lips were pale, her eyes glassy. She looked at me not with lust or even pity, but with something colder, something like trauma. Or maybe resentment. I need water, I said finally. She tossed me the bottle without a word. We stayed like that for a long time. No one moved. Just the forest breathing around us. The birds chirped again. Like the world had the audacity to keep spinning after what just happened. I pulled my pants up. She stood, brushed the dirt off her legs, and walked ahead on the trail without waiting for me. That was the moment I realized something had broken between us. Maybe not permanently, but definitely, deeply. And maybe we were both too scared to admit what exactly had just happened out there. We didn't speak for the rest of the hike. Not one word. The trees around us looked the same. Tall, ancient, indifferent. But the silence between us was no longer casual. It was dense. Awkward. Electric. Samantha walked a few feet ahead. Eyes on the trail. Her back stiff and unreadable. I followed slowly. Still weak. Still sore, and trying not to think about what had happened. But of course, I couldn't think about anything else. Every branch crack underfoot felt louder. Every bird call seemed distant. The forest that once felt peaceful now felt too quiet, like it was watching us. Judging. Or maybe just giving us space to come to terms with something unspeakable. I caught myself watching her walk. How she moved now. A little faster, as if trying to outrun something. Her braids swung side to side across her back, and the memory of her face down there focused, pale brave kept flashing in my mind. I hated it, and yet I couldn't shake it. We set up camp that night without discussion. No fire, no food, just water and sleeping bags under a tarp. We lay down, facing opposite directions, still silent, but I knew she wasn't sleeping, just like I wasn't. I could hear her breathing, shallow, restless. Once, she shifted, and her foot brushed mine under the blanket. Neither of us moved it away. That touch stayed in the air between us longer than it should have. By morning, we were back on the trail. No eye contact. No joking. No breakfast. When we finally reached the parking lot, I almost cried. Not from relief, but from the sudden weight of returning to the world. Phones buzzed to life. Civilization returned, but something inside us hadn't. On the drive home, she sat in the passenger seat staring out the window. I stole glances, hoping for a smile, a comment, even an insult. Nothing came. Just her reflection in the glass, looking older than she had 3 days ago. At home, everything snapped back to normal. Our parents were bickering in the kitchen. The TV was too loud. The dog barked at nothing. No one asked how the trip went. No one noticed the quiet between us. We didn't talk about it. Not that night. Not the next day. Not even weeks later, when she packed for college and I helped carry her boxes. It became a sealed moment in time. A mutual agreement of silence, like a dark glass we both refused to look through. But something had changed. I could feel it every time we passed each other in the hallway. She wasn't just Samantha anymore. She was the person who saved my life. The person who crossed a line for me that no one else ever would. I started watching her differently. Not with lust. Not with guilt. With something else. Something slower. Deeper. One night, I came home late from work and found her sitting in the living room. She was in pajamas, wrapped in a blanket, watching an old movie. I stood in the doorway for a second too long. She looked up at me and didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. "Want to sit?" she asked softly. I nodded, sat beside her. Our knees almost touched. We didn't speak. The TV flickered in front of us. Her hand was under the blanket. Mine was in my lap. The distance between us was small, but felt infinite. Still, it wasn't uncomfortable. Not anymore. It was loaded, tense, but familiar now. And in that stillness I realized, she hadn't looked away when it happened. She hadn't flinched. She'd saved me. Not just my life. She'd crossed into a part of me that no one ever had. And somehow, without saying a word, she'd allowed me into hers. I didn't know what that meant yet. But I knew it wasn't over. The house felt different after she left. Quieter. Not in the peaceful way, but in that eerie, hollow way. Like something had been ripped out and the echo hadn't caught up yet. Samantha was only a few hours away at college, but it felt like another world. Her room was still full of books, perfume, half-used lotion bottles, but she wasn't there. The door stayed closed most of the time. I couldn't bring myself to go inside, not even to clean. At first we barely texted, just the usual family check-ins. "You good? Yeah? How's school?" "Fine," but something unspoken always floated underneath the words. I could feel it every time her name lit up my screen. And then, late one night, almost midnight, I got a message from her. Just 2 words. "You remember?" My chest tightened. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the screen for maybe 10 minutes. Heart racing like I was back in those woods again. Finally, I typed and never forgot. 3 dots blinked, then stopped. Then nothing. For 2 days silence. Then she called. I answered on the first ring. Her voice was soft, almost guilty. "I don't know why I sent that." "You do," I said. There was a long pause. She sighed. "Yeah, I guess I do." We didn't talk about the snake, or the way her lips had touched the most private part of me, or how she'd looked at me that night, on the couch, when I sat beside her and neither of us moved. Instead, we talked about college, about how she hated her roommate, about how her biology professor was a narcissist. And slowly, the tension softened. The call lasted over an hour. From that night on, it became routine. Late night calls. Always. After 11, always when no one else was around. We told each other things we never had before. How I hated our dad's silence. How she always felt like a guest in her own family. How we both sometimes imagined running away. We never mentioned what happened. But it hung in the air between us. Like a ghost. Never hostile, just present. One night, she asked, "Do you think about it?" I knew exactly what she meant. "Every day," I said. Another pause. She breathed in hard. Then let it go. Me too. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about what she did for me in the woods. It wasn't about the act itself. It was about what came after. The silence. The glances. The late night movies. The aching distance. Something had shifted between us. We weren't siblings in the traditional sense. No shared blood. No childhood photos of us in matching pajamas. She came into my life when I was 12, and she was 13 when our parents got married. We didn't bond back then. We just coexisted. Separate orbits. But now, there was gravity. Heavy and strange. I started counting down the days till she'd come home for Thanksgiving break. I told myself it was just to see her again. Just to be normal. But I knew. I wanted to see her eyes. I wanted to see if they still held the same quiet weight. If she'd look at me the way she had in that flickering living room light. The night before she was due back. I cleaned her room. Not all of it. Just enough to make it feel like she was wanted. I changed the sheets. Dusted the desk. Set a mug of her favorite tea on the windowsill. When she walked through the door the next day, carrying her duffel and wearing that same old hoodie she used to steal from me, I froze. So did she. Our parents hugged her, asked how the drive was. Wow, she answered, laughed, smiled. But when our eyes met across the room, everything else dropped away. We didn't say a word. But we didn't need to. We both knew. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. The house was full again, but it felt smaller. Thanksgiving had brought everyone home, but for me and Samantha the air had a different weight. Our parents moved through the weekend like everything was normal. Cooking, laughing, watching reruns of old sitcoms. But behind every shared glance, every accidental touch in the hallway, something crackled between us. The night before Thanksgiving, after the dishes were done and our parents had gone to bed, we stayed up. It wasn't planned. I found her on the back porch, sitting with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, eyes staring into the dark. She didn't look up when I stepped out. I couldn't sleep, she said. Me neither. I sat down beside her. The porch was cold, but the space between us felt hot, electric. The silence didn't feel awkward. It felt necessary, like words would break something fragile. Finally she asked, "Do you think we're bad people?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know. I've been trying to forget," she whispered. Trying to bury it. Pretend it was just a weird, awful situation. But it wasn't just that. I finished for her. She looked at me. No, it wasn't. The porch light behind us buzzed faintly, casting a dim glow. Her face was half in shadow, half in gold. I wanted to reach out and touch her cheek, just to see if the heat I felt inside would burn through her skin too. She turned back toward the yard. "I feel like I'm living two lives, one where I'm just me, Sam, your stepsister, and the other." I nodded. "The other where I think about you every night before I fall asleep." She flinched, then exhaled slowly. "Yeah, that one." We sat in silence again. This time it wasn't comfortable. It was pulsing, alive. Then she said it. Soft, careful. "I didn't do it just because of the venom." I blinked. "What?" "In the woods. I told myself I was doing it to save you, and I was. But that's not all it was. Not completely." She finally turned to face me fully. Her eyes were wet, but steady. "I cared about you, Tyler. I still do. And I don't know what that means anymore." I leaned in, slow enough to stop if she pulled away. She didn't. Our foreheads touched, then slowly. Her lips. It wasn't a kiss born of lust. It was quiet, terrified, real. We pulled apart almost immediately, both breathing hard. The guilt slammed in after. "We can't," she whispered. "We can't do this." "I know," I said. But neither of us moved. The next day we played normal, ate dinner, laughed at our uncle's dumb jokes, cleaned dishes together, smiled in family photos. But something irreversible had happened. That night, she came into my room after everyone had gone to bed. She didn't say anything, just stood there in her oversized t-shirt, barefoot on the carpet. I sat up in bed, heartbeat in my throat. She walked over, sat beside me. "I don't know what we're doing," she said. "Me neither. But I'm tired of pretending." "Yeah," I said. "Me too." She lay down beside me, back to back. Our bodies didn't touch, but our breathing slowly synced. And somewhere in that silence something began. Or maybe, it had already begun long ago. And now, we were just finally brave enough to admit it. The morning after Thanksgiving was colder than I expected. Samantha was already packed, ready to leave. But neither of us wanted to say goodbye. The silence between us was heavier than the air outside. Her car sat idling in the driveway while we stood on the porch, not knowing how to close the chapter we just opened. "I guess this is it," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," I answered. "For now." We hugged, the kind of hug that holds everything we didn't say. Our bodies pressed together, hearts pounding like a frantic drum. I wanted to stay in that moment forever, but she pulled away first, slipping inside the car. I watched her drive off, the tail lights blinking through the bare trees. My chest ached in a way I hadn't expected. Back in my room, the silence screamed. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us, that our lives were tangled in a way neither of us could undo. I grabbed my phone and hesitated. Finally, I texted her, "Did you make it okay?" Seconds later her reply came. "Yeah, just got in. Missing you already." That simple message hit me harder than I thought possible. Missing her? How? Why? We started texting every day. At first it was small talk. "What did you eat? Did you finish that paper?" But beneath every word, there was something raw and real. One night, after hours of texting, she sent me a photo, a sunset over her dorm window. The colors were bleeding into the sky, oranges melting into pinks. I replied, "Beautiful. But not as beautiful as you." She didn't respond right away. When she did, her message was hesitant. "Tyler, we shouldn't." "I know," I said. "It's wrong. I can't help how I feel." The words were dangerous, but neither of us could stop. Days turned into weeks. Our messages became longer, more desperate. We shared secrets, fears, and moments from our days that no one else knew. One afternoon, she texted, "Sometimes I lie awake thinking about that night in the woods." I replied, "Me too. It's like a weight I can't put down. Do you ever wonder what would happen if we were different?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I typed every damn day. The truth was neither of us had answers, only questions. And the silence between those questions was louder than ever. One night, she called. Her voice was trembling. "Tyler, I don't know how much longer I can do this." "Me neither," I admitted. "We're playing with fire. Maybe that's what makes it feel so alive." She sighed. "I'm scared." "Me too." We stayed on the phone until the sun started peeking through the curtains. Neither of us wanted to say goodbye, but life doesn't wait. The distance between us was growing. Not just miles, but the walls we built to protect ourselves. Yet no matter how far apart we were, the connection, the secret, dangerous, beautiful thing, refused to break. A few weeks had passed since Samantha left, but the tension between us hadn't eased. In fact, it had only grown thicker, like smoke filling every corner of the house. When I came home for the weekend, the air felt different. Charged, almost electric. Something was off. My dad was the first to notice. He kept giving me those sideways looks, the kind that said he knew more than he let on. One evening, as we were all gathered in the living room, he cleared his throat and asked, "Tyler, Sam, You two have been spending a lot of time together lately. More than usual. Huh. My heart hammered. Samantha glanced at me. Eyes wide but unreadable. What do you mean, Dad? I asked. Trying to sound casual. You know, he said. Voice low but firm. I just think it's unusual. The way you two look at each other. Like you're hiding something. My mom chimed in, nervously fiddling with her necklace. Honey, is everything okay between you two? Samantha swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the edge of the couch. The room was thick with silence. I swallowed the lump in my throat, and finally said, we're just close. Step-siblings. You know. Dad's eyes narrowed. Close is one thing, but there's something more here. And I don't think it's healthy. That hit me like a punch. After dinner, I found Samantha in her old room. The one she still used when she came home. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with something fierce. We can't keep pretending, she said, voice barely a whisper. I know, I replied. But what do we do now? She looked away. I don't want to lose my family. Or you. Neither did I. But the secret was out. At least, the suspicion was. And once suspicion takes root, it's hard to stop it from spreading. The next day, my mom pulled me aside. Tyler, I know you care about Samantha, but you have to think about the consequences. What if someone finds out? I nodded, feeling trapped. Then came the hardest part. Seeing Samantha avoid me. The stolen glances turning into nothing at all. The warmth between us cooled by fear and guilt. But even with the distance growing, every time we locked eyes, the memories of that night in the woods, and everything that followed, came rushing back. The unspoken truth was still there, hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. And I knew, no matter what, we couldn't go back to how things were before. The days after Dad's confrontation felt like walking on a tightrope stretched thin over a deep canyon. Every step, every word could send everything crashing down. Samantha and I both tried to pretend the tension wasn't suffocating, but it was there. In every glance, every hesitant touch, every unfinished conversation. One evening, the silence between us exploded. We were alone in the kitchen, the only light coming from the fridge door as I grabbed a drink. Samantha was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, eyes burning with frustration and fear. Tyler, we can't keep doing this, she said, voice trembling. This secret, this, whatever we have, it's tearing me apart. I know, I replied, swallowing hard. But hiding it feels like I'm dying. She stepped closer, voice soft but fierce. What if we tell them? What if we're honest? Maybe it's the only way to stop running. The idea terrified me. The judgment, the shame, the possible loss of family. It was a risk so huge I could barely breathe. But then I looked into her eyes and saw the same truth I felt deep inside. We couldn't keep pretending. Not to ourselves. Not to anyone. That night, we sat down with Mom and Dad in the living room. The house was still, the world holding its breath. Samantha started, her voice shaking but steady. We need to tell you something, she said. Something that happened between us after the woods. I reached out, took her hand and spoke next. We didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. And it's real. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Dad's face went pale, then hardened. Silence pressed down, thick and heavy. Then slowly, my mom spoke. I don't understand it, but I love you both, and we'll figure this out together. Dad's voice was quieter than I expected. This isn't easy, but hiding it only hurts everyone. If you're honest with yourselves, maybe we can find a way. Relief and fear washed over me. We had crossed a line, but maybe it was the one that led to freedom. In the days that followed, conversations were awkward, painful, but real. There were tears and angry words, but also moments of understanding and hope. Samantha and I knew it wouldn't be easy. The road ahead was uncertain and scary. But for the first time in a long time, we didn't have to hide, and somehow, that made all the difference.